Welcome. This is TechWorks CC2-Series Clinical System Technical Training Part 1. I am Mark Dundas, and I will be your host. Quick note about this technical training series. This is CC2-Series, as I mentioned. This is a 4-part series, and this particular presentation is Part 1, Product System and Overview. We assume that our audience already knows something about healthcare communications, nurse call, et cetera, so we don't have to explain that. There is a presentation guide handout available online for you to print out and take notes if you'd like to follow along. And there is also a certification test available for installers. If you take all 4 parts of the training and complete all 4 parts of the test, we will certify you as a TechWorks authorized installer. Let's get started. What is a clinical? We're offering something different. These are communication tools that are cost effective, and it's based on technology developed for your budget. They're scalable. You only buy the pieces that you need. You don't have to buy a central controller or make a large investment in some particular piece of equipment. You can keep expanding this now and into the future. We make a lot of specialty devices. We also make accessories like the IMR that give you all kinds of other capability, but you don't have to have any of that. So when you're talking about modern clinic facilities, we can meet the needs in a scalable solution. Clinical is as simple as patient arrives in a room, the green light is flashing, telling a provider that this is the next technician or next doctor location. In other words, this patient is waiting to see a doctor. Doctor comes in and sees that, hey, I need an X-ray. They push the yellow light. They go on to see another patient and the yellow light is flashing. X-ray technician comes by, picks up the patient, takes the X-ray, brings them back to the room. When they're done, they push the doctor button so that the doctor, this goes back in the queue for him, and he returns to see the patient after the X-ray. When the doctor completes the visit, he pushes the blue button and says, hey, this room is ready to be cleaned and prepped for another patient. Sends the patient on their way, and off we go. There is also the ability to do emergency call from any of these stations. They have a red button on top, which can be used to track staff if you want to, or it can be programmed to be a flashing on first push of a red button. And this can also be activated by external equipment, passive devices like a pull station. So lots of things you can do with this thing, but that's basically what a clinical system is. It's a colored light system. Colors and functions can be customized. So we'll talk more about that. CC series is clinical room status. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's light and tone signaling through corridor lights and push buttons. Sometimes that's all there is just push buttons and lights. That's it. But there could be more. You could have annunciator panels somewhere, depending on what your annunciation needs are. This could include wall graphic displays. The target markets for the CC2 product are outpatient medical clinics. These are typically in diagnostic medical facilities versus treatment. And we'll talk more about that. But in modern US medical delivery, there is a certain portion of the clinic which is diagnostic, figuring out what's wrong with a patient. There is another part of the facility that may be involved in treatment where they got procedure rooms and that kind of thing. That is not where CC is designed for. Clinic call is a communication solution for diagnostic medicine. It is not intended to be a nurse call for treatment facilities. In diagnostic, they need a workflow tool. That's what room status means. We're telling them what the status of a location is. Treatment requires a nurse call. because it has code compliance issues. There are life safety issues. It requires someone gets notified it's life or death. Diagnostic medicine, we're trying to keep track of where people are. CC2 is not a nurse call. I can't overstress that enough. Diagnostic medicine includes things like family practice, urgent care, orthopedics and physical therapy, ophthalmology. Those are just a few things. Dermatology is another one that comes to mind. But these are facilities where there is not a life safety issue. What do I mean by this is not a nurse call? What exactly is a room status? It's about moving patients and staff efficiently. It's about diagnostic medical facilities versus treatment. It's about CC versus NC. Clinic call in the right place at the right time does things that a nurse call can't do. And likewise, a nurse call does things in a facility that a clinic call isn't intended to do. They're two separate functions. One tends to be staff to staff communication. That's what CC is. It's not a patient. It's not a critical care. It's not a life safety. It's one staff member telling another staff member something like patient arrival. You can tell a doctor, hey, your patient is ready to be seen. Doctor follow. Where is my doctor? Where is my staff? Where's my nurse? Next patient. I'm a doctor. I want to see as many patients as I can per day. I don't want to spend a lot of time figuring out who's next. The other thing you don't want to do is on patient satisfaction, you don't want to skip a patient. You want to make sure everybody gets served in a timely manner. Self-rooming is a new feature for us. It's something where rather than escorting someone to a room, you turn on a light from the receptionist console and a light blinks and you tell the patient, walk down this hall and go into the room with a blinking light. So things like that. That's what this is all about. It has nothing to do with life safety. Why? Why would I want one of these? Well, in diagnostic medical facilities, they need better efficiency. It's all about seeing patients, patient satisfaction, use of time, more patients per day, shorter wait times. That goes directly to customer satisfaction. Staff knows where to go next. They're not wasting their time running around trying to figure out where they're needed. Staff knows where each other are. So if they need to know where some specific person or skill is, they can look on the display and they can see where that person is. What else? What else can this thing do besides that? Well, we make a patient call cord. This isn't for surgery environments. Again, this isn't for life safety. But you might have a communication system where the patient isn't in any jeopardy, but they're stuck in a location for an extended period of time. They may need a bottle of water. They may need a chance to take a potty break. They need to tell somebody that they need attention. That's all this is. It's not life safety. Pull strings in restrooms. These are intended for restrooms that are not code compliant. In other words, there's not a high risk of a patient passing out in the restroom, getting isolated in a restroom because they've just had surgery and they're a little tipsy. This is for those restrooms where you don't expect somebody to need help, but they could need help. And for the customer satisfaction component, you want them to be able to call someone. These are passive stations. They need to hook to an active station. Our dome lights are smart dome lights, so you can hook these devices to a dome light. However, there are times when you don't want to have that kind of a dome light. You've got something else in mind. So we make a control module. The control module is built into our colored dome lights. But if you don't want the dome light, you put one of these control modules out there. Has 4 inputs and 4 outputs. It can have push buttons attached to it. It can have passive dome lights attached to it. It can do a lot of things for you. So there's a lot of flexibility and creativity. We believe that less wire is better than wireless. Why is that? In the clinic call system, we have a very unique distributed processing, which means there is no central equipment. Why does that matter? Because everything is very modular. If you want to add on to it, you add what you need. If you want to move something, you just move that part. You don't have a high upfront investment in a piece of equipment that is in the closet that's going to become obsolete. Everybody's been through the experience of having obsolescence. There's very little of that. We've been building the same products basically for 30 years. Reliable data communications. Because of using less wire, we have a very, very reliable data communication system. Very low cost of installation. There's limited labor, limited wire. It's easy to move and relocate. For those facilities that are put into like a rental space in a strip mall and they outgrow their facility, this system is extremely easy to relocate, and the hardware cost that you would invest in can be moved. It can be taken off the wall. The part that you throw away is a minimal amount of labor to install some new data cable, and everything is back up and usable. The other thing is, because this is fully digital, it means that it's very easy to integrate with other things, and we'll talk a lot more about that. Smart stations allow the installer to select the functionality. So in other words, what that means is if you bought a system and you decided you wanted the buttons to work a little differently, you don't have to rip it out and put in a new system. All you have to do is ask the installer to change a dip switch maybe, and it changes how the station functions. So there's lots of options. Quickly, network termination is critical. We use a twisted pair architecture, which means that you have to put a terminator on the end of the bus. It is not a loop. And because this is a technical installation training, this is critical. It makes the network extremely flexible from the standpoint of how it is used and how it is installed. It makes it very low cost because it's a very minimal amount of wiring. However, it is critical that you understand how this gets put together and how the terminators are located. So let's talk about what has changed in clinic hall over the years. What's the difference for those of you that knew what a CC was? What's the difference between that and a CC2? Well, the old CC was 12 volt and CC2 is 24 volt. That's the biggest difference. There was a reason to change the compatibility. But basically, CC series started in 1994. And back then, 12 volts made more sense. But for power considerations, efficiency, size of wire, et cetera, made a lot more sense to go to 24 volts going forward. The Clinical series was 12 volts only, where CC2 will run on anywhere from 11 to 25 volts. Why is that significant? Because you can plug a CC2 product into an old CC system and it'll work just fine. So it's not that CC2 has to have 24 volts to do what it does, but it works better on 24 volts. But it will also work, the smart stations will work on 11 volts. Down to 11 volts, so on 12 volt systems. So you can plug them into old systems. The danger is the old passive dome lights. We made some old dome lights with LEDs, old style LEDs. They weren't as bright, they weren't as nice as our new dome lights, and they ran on lower voltages, and they will not work with the newer dome lights. The newer dome lights need more power. Just basic design, we couldn't make those backward compatible. Doesn't happen very often, but it is something to consider. So let's talk about how a system goes together. Let's talk about the components of a system and how they all relate to each other. The significant thing is an exam room is basically what we call a group of devices. And a group of devices means that they share the same network address. So this dashed line running around here, this is your network cabling that we're talking about, that two twisted pair, how everything talks to each other is that dashed line. If I've got a 4-button station and a dome light outside in the hallway, those two stations are addressed identically. And we'll talk a lot more about that in part 4 of this presentation. That makes Any button push on that exam room panel light up that dome light. That's the first task, is the yellow button lights the yellow light, the green button lights the green button or green light. And that's all done by just making the address the same. Very, very simple. However, what that does for us is over the network, that makes that room appear on an annunciator. So because of the address being master 0 and column 8, C7 binary, so 0 through 7 equals 1 through 8 in decimal language, this room over here winds up on the right-hand column of the annunciator. And because these two annunciators are addressed the same, they both display this room. So it's very, very simple. Makes the architecture super simple. And the magic is this network, this TechWorks network of two twisted pair that runs from device to device so they can all talk to each other. The addressing is what makes them know where to go and who to talk to. The power supply should always be located near or connected near the middle of the network. That makes an equal amount of power get to both ends. That way you don't have power drops on one end. If you fed this whole thing from one end, this end's definitely getting enough power, but by the time you get all the way to the other end, you're going to have some voltage drops. So always try to connect your power supply in the middle of the network. Can I add an IMR to this system? What's an IMR? It's integrated messaging and reporting. Absolutely. It is a great way to share relevant information, like pocket pagers. It sounds old school, but people still use them. Tablets. People can carry around a tablet, and that tablet can display a map of the facility or their next location where they need to go. It can also work with cell phones. Cell phones do a great job of communicating things like the X-ray technician. So the X-ray technician needs to know where they are needed next. Every button in the system can have custom text associated with it, and it can send to one or more cell phones. So for instance, if I'm an X-ray technician and I'm covering a group of rooms, as they push the button on the yellow light, it can send me a text message, and the order in which they are received is the order in which I'm supposed to go to these rooms. If I had an emergency call, like a restroom, that might go to more than one person. That might go to several people very easily done, all in the programming. Any phone, any carrier, we don't care. It's not an app. It's not specific to one specific make or model of cell phone. It's just a text message. Digital signage. This is a very preferred way to see your facility. We can put a map up on the wall on a smart TV, and you can see your entire facility. And by the colored lights, as you can kind of see on this display, you can tell where everybody is. How does it work? The IMR is a little box that connects to the clinic call or the nurse call system and plugs into your network. So anything IP, including PCs, a PC in an exam room or at a nurse's station suddenly becomes a system display. It can also become an admin terminal. Who gets access to controlling the information or what they see on the system is totally controlled by passwords. So not everybody sees the same thing, and not everybody can access the programming or other features. You see what you need to see based on your credentials, how you log in. So for more information, we are open for business online 24/7, 365 at www.techworks-usa.com. There you'll find product brochures, specifications for architects and engineers. We also are happy to write custom specs. We are happy to do design and quoting, whether that's budgeting or specific help for a specific project that you're trying to bid. We're happy to help. Technical assistance. We always encourage that you take this technical training and read the installation manuals online before you call for tech support. We're here to help, but it's much easier for us to help you if you know what you're asking for and what you already have in your hand. So, thank you for joining us today. And next up is part 2, the parts and pieces of Clinical.